I don't think my series has gripped the entire world and caused a global leader to get on a plane and beg President Trump to shut me up because I'm just sitting there going, la, 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 she looks like a woman in a wig. I received a phone call from Trump himself. He said he was very confused when Emmanuel Macron took him to the side of a car, wanted him to get in touch with me to make me stop speaking about his wife. They contacted that UK firm and had them go out to find a crisis PR team in America ahead of my series. You really are asking people to defy their common sense in this moment.
I admire your balls. I mean, it's probably the wrong term to use, given the issue we're discussing. $300,000 to charity. I say she's a woman. Are you prepared to take that bet?
I am 1,000% prepared.
Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, who is packing stadiums in red states, by the way. That should be something that Democrats would want to latch onto. Part of the reason we're in this mess is because of Democrats like James Carville.
Because she's going to talk about affordability and the issues that actually matter to people, not this like whole made-up culture war issue and extends to the national scale. Do you think that if J.D. Vance ran simply on trans issues and you had like a Gavin Newsom talking about affordability, do you think that people would actually vote for J.D. Vance in that election?
James, you said last week that Democrats have to let this trans stuff go. What is your reaction?
My reaction is that's up to athletic governing bodies. I'm just not into the 400-meter dash at the girls' track meet.
Kat Abughazaleh, is Sydney Sweeney a Nazi?
In 2026, certainly the issues are going to be the cruelty of grabbing brown and black immigrants in Home Depot parking lots. That's not what America voted for.
Well, the massive lawsuit filed by the Macrons against Candace Owens is extraordinary and unprecedented on many levels. This is the world leader suing a US citizen for defamation in a US court. And the US citizen is not a legacy news brand or a business mogul, but a successful podcaster, which is a measure of the shifting balance of power in media. President Macron and his wife Brigitte accused Candace Owens of relentless worldwide bullying and a campaign of global humiliation over the repeated claim that Brigitte Macron is a man. Macron has tried other methods of warning Candace to drop the issue, including, she says, asking President Trump to call her directly, which he did. Well, so far, the main impact of the lawsuit has been to bring the Brigitte claims to an even bigger audience, with prominent coverage everywhere from NBC to CNN and the BBC. But many legal commentators reckon it's Candace Owens who ought to be worrying. So is she? Well, in a moment, I'll ask her. But here's a reminder of how we got here.
I think you're a man. I think it's beyond obvious that we're born a man. You may want to split hairs about, well, I'm really a woman. I feel on the inside, I'm a woman. That insulting wig that you're wearing. It's ridiculous. It's like you're laughing at us. What I'm saying is that you were born a man and you will die a man. It is very clear that Brigitte Trogneau existed. It is very clear that she was, in fact, the sister of Jean-Michel Trogneau. And I think that if I am guessing what took place here, Jean-Michel Trogneau took Brigitte Trogneau's identity at some point. It's plausible that Brigitte Trogneau got sick, that the real Brigitte Trogneau got sick and perhaps had a dying wish to help her brother. It's very early on, but I know that the process is supposed to be the pain, that they want to drag this out. I can't see them wanting to make it to discovery. I just don't see that happening. I think they'll fake kill Brigitte first. Like they'll be like, oh, Brigitte passed away from stress because of what Candace did.
Well, the host of the Candace Show, Candace Owens, rejoins me now. Candace, how are you?
I'm doing well. How are you, Piers?
I'm good. Are you a woman?
I am, in fact, a woman, and I certainly would never sue someone to prove to the world that that is a fact. I would probably be laughing.
Well, how can you prove to me you're a woman if I don't believe you?
I wouldn't have to. You could do 18 hours of a show saying that I was living as a man for 30 years. And the easiest thing for me to do, obviously, would be to just release pictures of me living, yearbooks, me on the cheerleading team, me pregnant, me with my children, raising my children, long before, if I ever got to the point where I thought that I needed to launch a lawsuit, I would probably just release a few photos if we're playing devil's advocate here.
But ultimately, the easiest and quickest and best way to prove to me that you're a woman, and I'm not disputing that you're a woman, I think you probably are. I know you like to cast doubt on people's gender and sexuality. So I'll just leave it floating, hoping that someone in the internet world grabs it and makes me tons of money with a, is Candace male or female? But my point is this, you would be able to prove it to me by taking a simple sex test, right? You would just say, here we are, here are the results, here's the sex test. That's the best way to do this, right?
Actually, because we were in communication with her legal team long before she launched this website, we never asked for something that deep. We literally gave her a list of 21 yes or no questions and asked her to just answer it on the record. Also offered to fly over to Paris and interview Brigitte to get her side of the story. Before we even launched the first episode of the Becoming Brigitte series, we were in communication and offered them a chance to rebut. And they came back and said, we don't have to submit anything to prove that she is a woman, and we don't want to answer your questions. I've published those legal letters. It's the reason why people that watch this series are just not believing the media when they pretend that this was like, oh, Candace wanted the blood of the first lady. No. Also, she's not suing. Obviously, my series was based on a book entitled Becoming Brigitte that I did alongside the journalist who worked on the story for 10 years. She's not suing him for defamation, but she is suing him for cyberbullying, which is really, if you read through the lawsuit against me, they are misrepresenting the things that I've said, taking them out of context, and pretty much smearing me in the process by pretending that we asked something extraordinary by saying we won't run this entire series if you can just show us a few photos of you living in this 30-year period.
Right. I think photos can be easily manipulated. We know that in the modern era. I just think a sex test is definitive. And the reason I'm asking you this is because I'm assuming, maybe I'm completely wrong, maybe I'm the deluded one here, I don't think so, but I'm assuming the only reason that Brigitte Macron and her husband, who's the president of France, are coming after you personally in American courts for defamation is that they know all they have to do to completely refute your entire conspiracy theory, which is what they say it is they just have to prove she's a woman. If she's a woman, and she's had 3 children, miraculously, and I know I've seen your slightly torturous explanation for how she's managed to secretly have 3 kids, and it wasn't her, and she's a man, but I've seen what you've said. But ultimately, if she proves she's a woman, which is very easily provable, your whole case just implodes, doesn't it?
Well, Piers, it sounds like you're on our side. It's been 10 years of the press saying that she was born a woman. She's sued people for cyberbullying. She's sued people for speaking wrong about a document. And yet the easiest path would have just been to simply release photos from 30 years of your life. That is why this is unbelievable. You're also, I think, largely misrepresenting my series. You showed only clips of me discussing things after the lawsuit, but you didn't actually show anything from my series. I don't think my series has gripped the entire world and caused a global leader to get on a plane and beg President Trump to shut me up because I'm just sitting there going, la, 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 she looks like a woman in a wig. No. It's a very serious subject, actually, Piers. And if you watched even the first episode of the Becoming Brigitte series, you'll understand there's an entire network of pedo criminals that are surrounding the Macrons. They have had multiple scandals regarding pedophilia that have just engulfed his presidency. And they are going after journalists. And to be clear, these were mainstream journalists, not far-right podcasters or however it's being presented in the media today, that were simply trying to do a biography on the First Lady. They were supporters of her. They were feminists. They wanted to basically glorify her as the president's wife, and they fell down a dark hole. Condé Nast journalists, by the way. They fell down a dark hole because they felt suddenly that they weren't able to get any answers to their basic questions. This was a mainstream issue in France. And so I think you do yourself a disservice when you misrepresent it as if I'm just like sitting here going, la, 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 she's wearing a wig. Show the real excerpts from the Becoming Brigitte series. It's incredibly compelling.
No, I saw that.
Think even you could ignore that it's strange. It's strange. Like 30 years of it. Why would you go through all this effort when you could just drop photos of 30 years of your life where you allegedly had 3 children? Where are your children, by the way?
Allegedly had 3 children.
Wouldn't your children come out, Piers, and defend you by just dropping pictures of their childhood with you? Do you know her children won't do that? And yet miraculously, those same children do
Candace,
drop photos of their father?
All right, Candace, let me present another series of explanations for what's happened here.
Sure.
I believe, and maybe I'm wrong, all right? So let me put that caveat at the start here. Maybe you're right, okay? I don't think you are. I think you've been hoodwinked by these journalists who have gone on a complete fantasy trail of nonsense, trying to suggest Brigitte Macron never had 3 children, is a man, it's all a lie, and all the stuff that you've been doing on your channel, and getting huge traffic for and making tons of money. So if you're right, it's been a magnificent display of fearless journalism exposing a bombshell revelation about the First Lady of France. I absolutely make no bones about that whatsoever. But if you're wrong, as I believe, I genuinely believe you're wrong, then it leaves 2 avenues of explanation for why you would pursue this so aggressively. One, you've been duped by these French journalists. And secondly, worse, that you kind of know it's not true, but you've ridden the wave of conspiracy theory about it because it's been so lucrative and it's gone around the world, like you've been saying. And I think that is why they're suing you, because ultimately they know that you've been amplifying this massively more than the journalists had in France, getting way more global traction. And it boils down to one simple fact, not photographs, as you keep trying to distract me with, but a sex test. If on day 1 of this case, she just produces an actual sex test report that says she's a woman, you're going to realize in that moment you've been completely duped. What do you do then? More and more Americans are putting their health first, getting back into shape. But diet and cardio are not enough. If you want to build muscle and burn fat, you must do strength training. That's why I'm delighted to be working with Jacked Up Fitness. Their all-in-one home gyms are best in class, and their all-new X Series elevates home fitness to a new level. The Jacked Up Power Rack Extreme functional trainer lets you do hundreds of exercises at your home. There's a new upgraded cable system which gives you unlimited width combinations to hit every muscle group. If you're new to strength training, they offer a completely free Get Jacked Up program with full body video workouts. Go to getjackedup.com to sign up for their free training program. And when you're ready to buy your own Jacked Up Power Rack Extreme, use the promo code PIERS, that's P-I-E-R-S, to save 10%. That's getjackedup.com, code PIERS.
Okay, Piers, I'm not concerned about it because, like I said, it's been about 10 years and Brigitte could have done that at any moment. She's been in multiple lawsuits, involved in lawsuits, trying to shut journalists up. I mean, you really are asking people to defy their common sense in this moment. They know what has happened here. They know that we went to Brigitte before we started this series to get Brigitte's side of this. We were in contact with Brigitte's lawyers, the same ones that filed this case. We asked simple yes or no questions. We were not requiring a blood test. We were asking, can you confirm this is you in this photo from the childhood that has been produced, ironically, by a woman who was charged for forging documents. That woman's name is Mimi Marchand, and she was the first couple's PR person until she got in too much trouble for being a gangster and forging documents. They refused and declined to answer those questions. So, like I said, you are asking people at home to suspend their common sense and to truly believe that rather than answering yes or no questions, rather than maybe at first going after the author of the book, Xavier Poussard, who is a Frenchman, for defamation, that would be the first thing. Why don't you launch, at least at the same time, both of these suits? I'm going to go after Candace and Xavier Poussard. They are instead only going after me for defamation and not the person who sourced this entire quote unquote rumor. There is, let me tell you, Piers, too many people who have watched this series, okay? They're watching your show now and they know that you are not accurately presenting what has happened here. But also, Piers, I think you are better than defending a pedocriminal network, right? And that's the biggest piece of the story is how many people around them have gone down, publicly admitted that they were pedophiles and were involved in this campaign at the beginning. Even if you removed the allegation, which I believe from the bottom of my heart, like I said early on, I would stake my entire career on the notion that she was actually born Jean-Michel Trogneau. I believe that, right? And I'm willing to go through this because it's an important story about government deception. But even if you suspended that, you are right now defending a government that lied even about the beginning of their quote unquote love story, in which his parents removed him from school because of this creepy 40-year-old teacher who found a 14-year-old student to be sexy or attractive. This is wrong. Everything that's happening right now in France is wrong and it is perverted. And as a mother, I will stand up to this. And I am confident that we will emerge as the winners of this, because in America, truth is an absolute defense against defamation. And I am telling the truth.
Yeah, it is an absolute defense. And I think there are perfectly legitimate questions about how their relationship started, the massive age gap, and the rest of it. I don't dispute that for a moment. But, you know, as you say, in a defamation case, it ultimately comes down to truth mattering. And it seems to me this whole case is going to be resolved in a very straightforward way, because the obvious way to prove that you're wrong and have been systematically lying about it, if you've been doing it deliberately or otherwise, but telling a lie about her, which has obviously caused an enormous amount of hurt, is if they just produce evidence she's a woman. Do you accept if they do that, your whole case disintegrates?
Of course it would disintegrate. Well, first off, no, they would have to prove the actual malice standard in America, which would mean that we knowingly knew this. We went to them with questions and they refused to answer. That is very strange. You're saying you're a victim now because this series came out, and yet you had the power to stop the series when we came to you and said, we're not interested in telling any lies. We actually want to get to the truth of this story. And we asked very simple questions. Did you ever live as a woman named Veronique? I believe, yes, Brigitte Macron, before taking on the identity of Brigitte Trogneau, lived as a woman named Veronique. Why wouldn't you just answer that question and say no? If it gave you so much grief that this rumor was out there, why not respond to that effectively in the 10-year period that you had the time to respond to it? Okay, Brigitte is not a victim. Far from that, I believe Brigitte is actually somebody who has victimized Emmanuel Macron. Emmanuel Macron is pathetic. He's absolutely pathetic for letting this go on for so long. You could easily dispel these rumors. And like I said, we were asking for photos from a 30-year period of Brigitte's life. We were not asking for blood. We were asking for simple answer, yes or no. Could you show us some photos of you raising your alleged children? They failed to produce that and now are pretending that they're victims. And of
but
course,
they're under no
backfiring.
obligation. Candace.
Right,
Candace,
they're not, but don't then complain
obligation.
and say you had to file a lawsuit. They contacted us, Piers. You're under no obligation. We didn't reach out to them.
They reached
out to us first.
Hang on. They say they made it crystal clear to you that all your claims were wrong, right? That your basic premise that she's a man is wrong. They said they told you that before. You went ahead anyway. You've carried on. Even when they launched the lawsuit, you carried on saying the same stuff, right? And it's a massive play on your part. Listen, I admire your balls. I mean, it's probably the wrong term to use given the issue we're discussing. But I do admire your balls, right? Because you're going for it and you're doubling and trebling and quadrupling down. But ultimately, your entire reputation is now directly linked, it seems to me, to whether Brigitte Macron is male or female. And if she proves she's a woman, where does that leave you?
If she was going to prove she was a woman, she would have done it over the last 10 years. And like I said, they came to us first and we said, we will not publish this series if you answer questions. Okay. So they were on the offense in that moment. I didn't go to them and go, I deserve a response to this. They had their lawyers email us speaking about this question. And so I have been completely honest and transparent with my audience. This matters to me because I'm a mother. And there are too many people around them that have been charged with pedophilia, many who have admitted that they were pedophiles, not even just pedophiles, incestuous pedophiles, people that molested their children that are surrounding them. Even the lawyers that they're dealing with are lawyers that defend pedophile and incest, preferring it to as happy incest when children are molested by their fathers. That's their current lawyer who has attached himself to this case in France, Eric Dupont-Moretti. Everywhere you look, you see a story regarding incest and pedophilia that surrounds this couple. I have presented that to the public. And if you are going to pretend that they have not lied, Piers, a couple of weeks ago, when Brigitte smacked Emmanuel Macron on camera on the plane, the Élysée Palace answered and said that it was Russian propaganda and that it never happened. They lie all the time. And it's very easy to lie in France, where they have laws against speech and laws against cyberbullying and where journalists are afraid. It's not so easy to lie in America. I'm glad they brought this to my turf, because now the French people are watching and cheering, knowing that this couple has lied to them from the very beginning. They are due for an exposure. And no, I do not believe that she is going to be able to now or willing to suddenly prove that she is a woman when she could have done that for the last 8 years.
Okay, tell me about the phone call from Donald Trump in which he tried to get you to drop all this.
Yeah, certainly. I received a phone call, and to be clear, this was on the very same day that Emmanuel Macron visited the White House, ostensibly to discuss Ukraine and Russia. I received a phone call at first from a third party saying that And what I was told was that Emmanuel Macron, who was negotiating in good faith regarding an end to the Ukraine and Russia war, which would have required his signature on some EU stuff, was holding up stuff because he wanted Trump to speak to me, to get me to stop talking about Brigitte Macron. Again, very odd measure when we already said that we would stop speaking about Brigitte Macron. If you had simply answered our questions, you could have stopped this. And then the next day, or maybe it was within 48 hours, I received a phone call from Trump himself. He obviously was not following the series. He is not someone who I think watches a bunch of podcasting shows, but he said he was very confused when Emmanuel Macron took him to the side of a car and brought this up, asked him if he knew him, asked me to stop speaking about his wife, wanted him to get in touch with me to make that happen. Again, that's an extraordinary effort for a state leader to get on a plane and speak to another state leader to shut up a podcaster in America when all you have to do to dispel the rumors is to tell the truth and answer the questions. It's so easy. It's so easy to do that. I would never let it get to a point where I had to sue
what did you say to Trump?
Podcaster in France. Well, I told him in the short run while they were having those negotiations that I wouldn't say anything, which is why we didn't report on it for, I think it was about 4 months or 5 months later. And that then afterwards, once they were done having those discussions, that I would reach out again and tell the person that I was going to speak about it publicly on my platform, because obviously I believe in free speech.
I mean, it's a fascinating situation that you've got a world leader coming after a podcaster. That, on its own, is fascinating. But it's because you have such a big following, and because they believe, from my understanding, that unlike the French journalists, where they were getting a small amount of traction, but not very much, it's only when you embraced this wholeheartedly and began to do this as a big series on your very popular show and channel, that at that point they realized this was going around the world and they had to do something about it. And they've launched this unprecedented act. I just can't, I mean, look, again, I might be wrong, but I cannot imagine a scenario where the president and the first lady of France launch an action like this unless they are 100% certain that they are right, that she is a woman.
Okay, then can you answer why?
Because
you're saying it's because I'm big. They've gone after small journalists, right? They just lost in the upper courts against the initial journalist that brought this forward for defamation. If you lost this on your home court, why would you take this lawsuit overseas? It doesn't make any sense, right? There had to have been some evidence presented, which they only presented an expired ID, which is completely ridiculous, for an expired voting ID. So you're telling me that you're not going to go after, you lose in the journalist on your home court, but you take this now overseas because I'm a bigger journalist. And to be clear, Piers, Xavier Poussard, they did launch a legal action against him on the same day they launched a legal action against me, okay? But they're not suing him for defamation. They are suing him for cyberbullying. So I got all of my information sourced from Xavier Poussard's book. I did a presentation on Xavier Poussard's book, and yet you don't go after Xavier Poussard for defamation, and he lives in France. Why is that? The answer to that question is because Xavier Poussard has been on the offense against them. He won in the courts to have her Sacré-Cœur, which is Sacred Heart, is where Brigitte Macron allegedly went to school in high school. He won for them to release we would call it in America, a yearbook, which would have had a photo of Brigitte Macron in it. The school is refusing to give it to him. So the court would have to at first acknowledge the actions that this brave journalist brought against Brigitte Macron to expose this story before they would acknowledge her actions against him. They are being very cunning in how they're dealing with this. They launched this lawsuit because they failed in their first defamation efforts. So they thought if they launched an even bigger lawsuit as a PR move, and to be clear, Piers, this is not all that they've done. We have evidence that they hired a crisis PR team here in the United States before I launched my first episode of Becoming Brigitte. When they were in communication with us back in January, they used a UK firm, and they contacted that UK firm and had them go out to find a crisis PR team in America ahead of my series. Why would you do that? That's completely crazy. You're in contact with us. You have the power to stop this series.
All right. If, as I believe, you are completely wrong and you end up losing this case, would you accept that everything you've been doing, if she establishes to the world she is a woman, that everything you've been doing would constitute, in that eventuality, a very cruel, vindictive campaign of bullying against a woman challenging
I want to be
her
very clear. I
existence
would have
as a woman.
never done this. Like I said, I was not interested in being the crusader against this, because I went to them and I said, if you answer these questions, we will not run the series. I'm only interested in truth. I only went after the story because I was shocked by the pedocriminal network which surrounds them. It's shocking, okay? There are real children being harmed right now in Paris, and there are real citizens that are being gaslit about these circumstances. I don't know many people who can say, all of my homies are pedophiles, but it just keeps happening by accident. This is a very big story in France, and the people in France are behind me for a reason, Piers. Like I said, this would not have been a globally impactful series if I was just up there flipping my hair saying, well, it kind of looks like her wig is bad. We presented a lot of evidence. Xavier presented a lot of evidence. And I believe in my heart of hearts that she is not only a groomer and a creep for the relationship that she began with Emmanuel Macron when he was just a student and 14 years old in that play, but also that they are liars that are leading this country, France, down the drain. Truly, I believe this in my heart that Brigitte Macron was born a child, actually not a man, but born a male named Jean-Michel Trogneau. And everything that they have done has only further led me to that conclusion, because they are not behaving as though truth is on their side. You don't try to silence journalists.
Well, last time we discussed this on Uncensored, I bet you $150,000 that you were wrong and that she's a woman. On X, when we discussed this further, I doubled it. This is for charity, to $300,000. You haven't accepted that yet. So right now, $300,000 to charity. I say she's a woman. Are you prepared to take that bet?
I am 1,000% prepared to take that bet. I actually didn't see your tweet, or I would have accepted it live. So we can totally accept that bet.
Okay,
I believe Brigitte Macron is a male, and that they will not be presenting any evidence to the contrary, because they would have done it already.
Okay, Candace, I appreciate you coming on Uncensored. I think you're completely wrong, but we shall see. I think the great thing about this action is we're going to get to the bottom of this extraordinary story. Thank you very much indeed for coming back on.
I'll be back to get my money, Piers.
We shall see. I'm very confident. Now, everybody knows how much I enjoy my tea, and I'm very happy to say that today's show is sponsored by Pique's Pure Fermented Teas. These are not your average brews. They're sourced from 250-year-old wild trees in the Himalayan foothills, which are untouched by modern farming. No pesticides, no fertilizers, just nature at its best. Pure delivers a full spectrum of prebiotics, probiotics, and postbiotics, just like the fermented foods found in longevity hotspots. It comes in crystal form, so there's no messing around. Just dissolve, sip, and feel the difference. It's trusted by health experts, including Casey Means and Dr. Mark Hyman. There's teas for all occasions, and they all support your gut health, metabolism, and cellular renewal. The next time you put the kettle on, ask yourself, is my tea working as hard as me? Pique's Pure Fermented Teas, for the gut of a Brit and the longevity of a Himalayan monk. Get 20% off for life, plus a free frother and glass beaker with the Pure Bundle. Visit piquelife.com/Piers. That's Pique, Pique, life.com/Piers. President Trump's approval ratings are not in great shape, but US conservatives will take some comfort from the fact that Democrats have never been less popular. All major pollsters have the party at record lows. They've no leader, and the public doesn't seem to like any of the people who would like to be.
Democrats at this point are historically divided. It is a complete and utter mess. It is messier than a hoarder's basement. What are we talking about here? The national early poll leader, 25% plus. Normally, that's where Democrats are. Biden was at 25% plus in 2020. Hillary Clinton was in 08 and 16. Gore was in 00 and 04. At this particular point, there is no one in the Democratic race for president who's polling at 25% plus. The water is quite warm. If you're a Democrat potentially thinking about running in 2028, jump right in, because at this point, there is no front runner.
Well, we're now a year on from the brat summer and 9 months on from the presidential election. But the Democrat currently being talked about the most is Kamala Harris. She's announced she won't run to be governor of California. perhaps because she still has one eye on a loftier office and she's back with a new book.
I mean, there's a lot of personal stuff in the book. I mean, poor Dougie.
You're blowing the lid off of Doug? What's going on?
For example, my birthday's in October. The election's in November. You see where I'm going. And Dougie kind of dropped the ball on my big birthday.
He didn't get you anything?
Oh, you have to read the book.
Can't wait to read that one. Well, Democrats are still deeply divided over which way they should turn. Do they move back to the centre with the measured liberalism espoused by luminaries such as James Carville? Or do they plough on with the radical populism embodied by the likes of AOC, Mamdani, and a new wave of digital-savvy Democrats seeking to dethrone their failing forefathers? Well, let's ask them. To debate all this, I'm joined by legendary Democrat strategist James Carville, Democrat influencer Harry Sisson, the new wave Democrat running for Congress in Illinois, Kat Abughazaleh, and the former Republican congressman and presidential challenger, Joe Walsh. Well, welcome to all of you. A very stellar panel to discuss the state of the Democrat Party. James Carville, in all your life, have you ever known the Democrats to be so unpopular? And if not, why? Why are they so unpopular?
Well, they're very unpopular because they're unpopular among Democrats because they lost an election. That is why people belong to a political party. However, I'm forced to point out that since the election and every special has been held, Democrats have won. So people are voting for us. I really don't care what the Gallup party favorability is as long as we win elections. And by the way, Piers, we're going to win elections in Virginia, like big. When I say big, I mean like really big. We're going to win in New Jersey. And we're not going to have a party leader until we have a presidential nominee. It just doesn't, it can't happen any other way. And boy, do we have some talented people thinking about running for president. I think the future is just fine. Thank you.
I mean, it's interesting because Kamala Harris was unable to name a single person, or didn't want to, that she thought was part of this extraordinarily exciting group of people that could lead the party. Are you prepared to name some names?
Oh, I could name 7 names off the top of my head. All right, but then y'all named 7, and there's 3 more I didn't name. I have never seen a political party at a point in my entire life in politics, which is like 50 years, that has more talent than the current Democratic Party has. And that is a pretty much acknowledged fact among people who cover national politics and pay attention to national politics closely. And I don't think...
Well, give me a name.
You know, I mean, Vice President Harris, Whitmer, Bashir, Shapiro, Moore, Warnock. I don't know if Harris is at the same talent level that these people are at. I'm talking about sheer, raw, naked political communication skill. I have never seen better than I see right now, waiting in the wings to run for president. And to not acknowledge that...
James, all due respect. James.
But
all due respect.
Well, go ahead.
When the
you don't
first
have to have
name
respect. Just do it.
When the first... That's why I like you.
Just do it. You don't need to respect.
When the first name you... I get it. Well, let me do it without respect then. The first name you gave me was Kamala Harris, right? I watched her on Colbert, and I witnessed 2 of the reasons, actually, why the Democrats are in such disarray, and also why late-night television is in such disarray in America.
I don't
the
think
second
Harris
part
was the first name I gave you.
It was.
I thought Whitmer was the first name I gave you.
No, you said Kamala first.
If she runs, it's fine. She's one of any number of people, and maybe she'll be better if she runs in 2028 than she was in 2024. But I would not consider her, in terms of expert communicators, in the top tier of current Democrats.
No, but that's the point. She's the first name you gave me, and she's a complete and utter dud.
I don't know if she was the first name I gave or what order I gave the name. I mean, how stupid is that?
She would not inspire me.
I gave you 7 names.
She would not inspire me.
I gave you 7 names.
Yeah, she wouldn't inspire me. She wouldn't inspire me to open a bag of chips. And she was a total disaster in the last election. It's why Trump won.
Look, Trump won because the Democratic Party, the country wanted change. They didn't want Biden to run. Biden didn't get out until July 21st, and Harris refused to say where she changed. You're exactly right. But I admit that 2024 was, I lay it right at the foot of the Democratic Party. But I don't know what that doesn't have anything to do with going forward, the fact that we have all of this talent, and all you want to do is talk about Harris, which doesn't make any sense.
Because she's the first.
Look at the staggering people we have out there. I don't know who the first name I mentioned was. I mentioned 7 names. It doesn't matter what order. I said I could mention 9, but this is a stupid argument. If it's the first or the 10th name I mentioned, it doesn't. I don't understand what you're talking about, Piers.
Well, I'm just saying that if the first name you give me is a complete dud, it makes me think that maybe there isn't a great plethora of brilliantly intelligent candidates who are going to ignite America.
I think there is. I think there is, and I think you're fighting the truth.
Okay, well, we'll see. Look, the proof, as always, will be in the pudding. Let me bring in Kat Abughazaleh here. Look, you're one of the new wave Democrats running the Congress in Illinois. What does that mean? I mean, how are you going to galvanize America away from what Trump does very successfully, which is messaging, and secondly, has a core of common sense? People may not like him, they may not like the rhetoric, but when he starts talking about he wants people to pay lower taxes, he wants fewer foreign wars, he wants a controlled southern border, he wants a better immigration system, a lot of Americans, as we saw at the last election, nod. And when he says, you know what, and also we're going to have no more men in women's sport, most Americans go, yeah, that's common sense. So what are you going to do which will tackle that Trump, away from the rhetoric, has a core of common sense that runs through what he says that resonates with people? There's a lot going on with the global economy. It's entirely reasonable to wonder what the effect will be on your savings and investments. Consider diversifying with gold through Birch Gold Group. For decades, gold has been viewed as a safe haven in times of uncertainty, stagnation, and high inflation. Birch Gold makes it extremely easy for you to diversify some of your savings into gold. If you have an IRA or an old 401k, you can convert that into a tax-sheltered IRA in physical gold. Or you can buy gold to keep in your safe. First, get educated. Birch Gold will send you a free info kit on gold. Just text my name, Piers, P-I-E-R-S, to the number 989898. Again, text Piers to 989898. Consider diversifying a portion of your savings into gold. That way, if the Fed can't stay ahead of the curve, at least you can stay ahead for yourself.
Yeah, one of the things we saw in 2024 is that when people's material needs aren't met, they want solutions. And even if those solutions are bad, as I think Trump's are, they're at least not being gaslit about their economic situations. And I was really interested to hear Mr. Carville's names that he mentioned, and Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, who is packing stadiums in red states, by the way. Like, regardless of what you think about her, that should be something that Democrats would want to latch onto. That she didn't even pop up in those names is kind of ludicrous to me. I think part of the reason we're in this mess is because of Democrats like James Carville that have been pushing an old playbook that is outdated, that are sticking to these ideas that don't resonate with people. Trying to run things through 5 different pollsters before you put out a message doesn't resonate with people. Trying to move to the right when the center should be housing, groceries, and healthcare for everyone, and with money left over, that's what the center should be. And somehow we're saying we should move even further to the right of it, when our grandparents would think that's the center as well. And it's time for Democrats to recognize that the old playbook is thrown out the window. We need people in power that understand the right, that also understand messaging, and they're not ashamed of their views.
All right, Joe Walsh, look, there's obviously a lot of debate going on between Democrats. That's why I got everyone here, actually, to talk about this. It is a fascinating moment in time for the Democrat Party. But I'm not hearing yet what the brave new world is that is actually going to be a successful election play in a general election. I've got no doubt that, as with all opposition scenarios, that the Democrats will win well in local, state governors and so on. Of course they will. Everybody does. But when it comes to a national election in 2028, I would be really concerned if I was a Democrat right now about, well, where is this talisman or taliswoman who is going to ignite this party? It won't be AOC. It cannot be somebody who has her views or who has that voice, frankly. It can't be her. It definitely can't be Kamala Harris. It can't be somebody ancient like Joe Biden who can't string a sentence together. I think it should be somebody like a Bill Clinton, somebody who's a centrist, really, with common sense views, liberal sensibilities, but in the right way. But he doesn't sound like a screaming socialist lunatic. Your thoughts?
Well, I agree with a lot of that, Piers, but I also agree with Kat on a lot. Look, as someone who, former Tea Party guy, I became a Democrat 8 to 9 weeks ago because this is an unprecedented moment in American politics. My former party is a fascist party, but you're right, Piers, they won. So how do Democrats beat that? I think Democrats need authentic people. They need candidates who are authentic. I could give a damn what their communication skills are. Kat's right. I want a Democrat who can look in the camera, look at a bunch of people and say, this is who I am. This is what I believe. I don't give a damn if this pisses you off. And Piers, I don't care whether that person comes from the progressive wing or where I am, the more moderate wing. Democrats need a populist. They need a fighter. Trump, is a pretend populist, but Democrats have been AWOL during this populist moment. They need a fighter, Piers, wherever that comes from.
Well, they do, but Harry Sisson, they also need, I think James Carville himself said last week, you've got to, as a party, you've got to park the trans stuff. You can't keep telling Americans it's fine for biological men to compete. Well, Kat, you can roll your eyes, because I know the Democrats love to think in their quaint little way that nobody cares. Trust me, they care, right? When they hear
I am the only woman on this panel.
Well, hang on.
I am the only person here involved with recreational sports where I play with trans people, by the way. I'm the only woman on here that'll probably have a family in the next decade. I am the person that you are talking about that should be concerned about this, and I'm not, because this is a manufactured issue. It is a manufactured issue.
This is the problem. This is why you won't win elections.
How much?
No,
that's just not true.
That's why you won't win.
People under the bus.
When you deny science and biology, you will not win an election. I can absolutely take that to the bank for you.
You are
will
so
not
obsessed
win
with this
as long as
and
you
aren't
keep trying
listening
to.
to the
As long as you
woman.
keep trying
You're
to tell.
saying that this is hurting women and girls. Can you name 5 WNBA players?
I'm saying if you hang around with your progressive mates. You hang around with your progressive mates and you all boast about how many trans athletes you know and how it doesn't have any impact on women's sport. And then we all watch the Paris Olympics and we watch a biological male who had been banned from the World Championships for testing positive for male chromosomes, beating up a young female Italian boxer so badly the boxer quit after 40 seconds. And that biological male wins
just
gold.
Spreading misinformation at this point. There are plenty of athletes that have Michael Phelps is basically his entire body is made to swim. Like the fact that you're talking about common sense solutions, all this stuff, and then every single time you want to talk about things, you bring up trans people when they are just trying to live their lives is ridiculous. What we actually need to do
it has nothing to do with them living their lives.
Material needs. That is what's happening right now. We need to be using material needs are wrong.
Let me respond. I have nothing but respect for trans people. Always have said that publicly, loudly and proudly. I want trans people to have the same rights to fairness, equality and safety that all of us enjoy. Right? I've always said this. However, at the moment, what's been happening in the last few years is the trans rights lobby has been aggressively eroding women's rights to fairness, equality and safety.
Who likes
and that's
when
I have a big
sports.
problem. And if you want to run something in America, you want to be an elected official, If you're going to run on a ticket that nobody cares and it doesn't matter, I'm telling you, you will lose. And your party, if they have a leader that also believes this bullshit, is also going to lose. It is as simple as that. Let me go to James. In fact, let me go to Harry on this. Harry, where do you sit? I mean, are we at the stage where I can ask you what a woman is yet or not?
Well, I just think this conversation, I agree with, I just think it's so meaningless. Like, I think if the Republican candidate in Kat's district would run solely on trans issues, Kat would love it. She'd be so happy because she's going to talk about affordability and the issues that actually matter to people, not this like whole made up, culture war issue, and that it extends to the national scale. It absolutely is manufactured. Piers, this is so disingenuous.
God, man.
Piers, listen. In 2028, do you think that if J.D. Vance ran simply on trans issues and you had like a Gavin Newsom talking about affordability, do you think that people would actually vote for J.D. Vance in that election?
Nobody's going to run on just trans issues. But if you think that Donald Trump didn't win... Well, hang on.
Wait,
let me respond.
We're trying to talk about affordability and common sense. You're talking about
Let me give you my considered...
Go ahead.
Let me give you my considered answer, Harry, right? I think Trump won for 3 reasons. I think 1, the economy. I think 2, immigration. And I think 3, the culture war stuff that you guys love to play down, but also love to fuel. So when there's a Sydney Sweeney ad comes out, you all throw your toys out the stroller and make it a huge story. But actually, people care about this stuff.
They do
I don't
know
not
a single
want
Democrat.
trans athletes in women's sport. James
Carville
Carville is
Democrat.
right about this. I'll come in a moment. But you're so wrong, you guys. And if you think this is a winning proposition...
Piers, I don't know a single Democrat on your Sydney Sweeney thing who actually is angry at the ad. You know me. We've talked before. I love Joe Biden. I'm as Democratic as you can get.
I've had them on my show.
I couldn't care. Well, then they're not representative of the Democratic Party.
was literally spitting blood.
Then Piers, listen to me when I say this. They are not represented. They are not representative of the Democratic Party. You talk to your average Democrat on the street. You ask them about the Sydney Sweeney jean ad. They're on their way to work. They don't give a shit. They couldn't care less if she's wearing jeans in an ad.
This is where you guys are so wrong. Harry.
Oh, wait, I'm saying, Piers, I'm saying the opposite of what you're arguing right now. I'm saying I don't care about the ad. I don't care.
Harry, you're wrong. Let me tell you why I think you're wrong. Respectfully. Or not respectfully. You can play the James Carville thing of saying,
no,
I don't care
like
about
the
your
respect, Piers.
That's fine.
I like the respect.
I think this. I think it's a number of things. If it's J.D. Vance in 2028, he'll run on economy and immigration, probably fewer foreign wars, all the things that made Trump popular, but he'll also run hard on the culture war stuff if you lot are still running on absolute nonsense.
Piers, let's cite our friend James Carville. It'll come down to it's the economy, stupid. Donald Trump in 2020 tried to run on culture war issues. There were Republican senators in 2020 who tried to run on culture war issues in their states, and they lost because the economy was failing. The economy was failing the average hardworking American. So if J.D. Vance in 2028 wants to run on the economy and immigration, he'll lose because people are outraged by what inflation going up, people being kidnapped off the streets by masked agents. And if he wants to throw the culture war issues in there,
you were 3.5 years away from that election. I would wait and see. Yes. I'd wait and see how that plays out. James Carville,
Piers,
let me get to James. Hang on, Joe. I want to go to James because Joe. Quickly.
No, I was just going to say quickly. I agree with Harry and Kat on the issue, but Piers, I agree with you on the politics. Look, I used to be a culture war fighter on the right. Republicans throw out this stuff and Democrats never fight back. And it matters. And it did cost them. It all matters. The transgender issue matters. And the great irony is most Americans are where Democrats are, where you are, Piers, on the issue. Transgender Americans should have full rights. Let them live their life in peace. And we embrace them all. When it comes to transgender women in sports, man, the competition's got to be fair, period. That's where most Americans are. Democrats need to fight that fight because most Americans
where we have most of our data about transgender.
Yeah, and by the way, the idea Democrats do not,
and the military
the idea that
has
Democrats
shown
do not
that there is not a physical benefit. Like this is
it's complete
U.S.
nonsense,
military.
Kat.
This is just data from the U.S. military of soldiers who have transitioned.
It's nonsense. Of course, men have. Okay, so let me take your argument to its logical extension. Why don't we make the Olympics gender neutral? One gender, anyone can enter any race. You up for that?
I think there should be plenty of gender-neutral sports, frankly. I mean, I love doing that in kickball leagues.
No,
I'm pretty good at it.
Sorry, you're just saying you just said there's no physical advantage for men. So let's have gender-neutral Olympics where you can be male or female and it's all in one gender-neutral sport, right? Would you do that for the whole Olympics? Yes or no?
Sure. I'm not in charge of the Olympics, but
great. You've just literally ensured that no women would win an Olympic gold medal again, with the possible exception of equestrian and I think one form of shooting. Other than that, no women ever win an Olympic medal ever again. Thank you, Kat Abu. Brilliant. What a brilliant election-winning campaign message. The Olympics are going to be gender neutral, says Kat Abu. I'm not voting for you in a million light years. James Carville,
I don't think you live in my district.
You said last week. You know what? If your district could hear you talking about gender-neutral Olympics, they think you were insane. James Carville, last week you said... Well, look, let's go to old James, as you ridiculed him, but actually one of the smartest guys in American modern politics for the last 40 years. James, you said last week that Democrats have to let this trans stuff go. So we're listening to two young Democrats here, making it clear they don't think it's a problem. And by the way, we should have gender-neutral Olympics. What is your reaction?
My reaction is that's up to athletic governing bodies. I'm just not into the 400-meter dash at the girls' track meet in Minnesota. Okay, that they set rules and whatever they are. And I think they ought to be men's sport, and I think they ought to be women's sports. I've come to really love women's basketball. I think it's even a fast-paced game, but I think we should keep men and women's basketball. But I really don't spend a lot of time worrying about this. It's not a very big issue in my life. And we had 10,000 sports governing agencies in the United States, and they can figure out the fairest way to compete. But I want to make a point. The people that are going to decide the direction of the Democratic Party are going to be people that vote in the primaries in 2028. And I think that they have a really good record when they're given a choice, which they were not given in 2024, of picking pretty strong candidates. So I am not at all that worried. And you're right, if AOC is very talented, she wants to run, she should run. I'm telling everybody, all of you should run. And then let's let the voters, not the commentators, not the consultants, not the columnists, Democratic voters are going to decide the direction their party's going to go in. And I'm very, very happy with that conclusion.
Let me tell you, I have more chance of becoming the next president of the United States than Alexandra Ocasio-Cortez. And I'm not even American. That's how low her chances are.
That's for Democratic voters to decide.
There are Republicans watching this. There are Republicans watching this going, great. So the Democrats are going to go for a far left progressive loon ball.
There are Republicans in Idaho that are going to a stadium to listen to AOC's
can I just clear
hacking stadiums in red states.
Yeah, James.
Can I just clear something? I said everybody's going to run. And the Democrats go, shoot. Now, I'll tell you, if you think the party's so bad, I will give you 5 points in the Virginia governor's race and bet you $1,000 right now. I'll bet you $1,000.
Well, I'll bet you 1,000.
And the Republicans are running. They're running on trans stuff. They're running on that. Let's take the bet. $1,000. Yeah. I'm laying 5 points. You want it?
I've got a better bet.
You're not on?
No. Well, I've got a better bet.
No, I want to bet 1,000.
Hang on. Let me respond.
Let me respond. 1,000 of Virginia governors plus 5.
I will bet you that if they go for a progressive left candidate to run the party, then you will get flatlined in 2028. And I'll bet you 10,000 you get flatlined if it's progressive left.
Listen to me. Democratic voters are going to decide that. The Democrats have never elected the most left-wing person running for president. So I'm not worried. But you're not going to bet me on Virginia. You're talking about the most unpopular, dead political party that exists in Western political history, and I'm giving you 5 points. And you're not going to sit here and say, okay, James, you're on for $1,000.
No, because I think what happens in between general elections is no. I'm not taking that bet, but I will bet you $10,000 that a progressive left candidate can't win the election.
I'll tell you, I'll do 1,000 pounds and lunch at Scott's, okay? because I'll be over
actually,
that.
that's quite
but
tempting
right now,
now.
I'm offering you the bet. I'm giving you 5 points.
All right, you know what? I'll take it. £1,000 at lunch at Scott's. Done. I'll take it, and I get 5 points. I'll take
and a Republican plus 5. Okay, we're on. We got a bet.
Okay, but so Joe, let me bring Joe back in. I've been watching what's happening with Mamdani in New York, and it's very interesting to me because he's a pretty dyed-in-the-wool socialist with a track record of saying ridiculous things like defund the police and all the rest of it, and yet he's storming to apparent victory to be mayor of New York City. What does that say about where voters are right now?
Look, it says a lot about where voters are in New York City. I mean, again, Piers, I'm a Democrat only 8 weeks. You could call me a conservative Democrat. My God, Mamdani won the nomination in New York City. Hell yes, the party needs to embrace him, enthusiastically embrace him, show this freaking country and the world that Democrats understand we're a big tent. You know, Mamdani may not be able to win in Tennessee or Kentucky. Joe Walsh couldn't win in New York City. This fear that Democrats have to embrace Mamdani is what's really going to piss their voters off. We should embrace him, just like we should embrace more moderate Democrats in other places as well.
But here's the problem with that, I think, is that the trouble with Mamdani is he's a good communicator. He looks the part. He sounds the part. I can see a lot of things going for him. But when you actually get into his public statements on the record, some of the stuff he said about the police, that alone to me makes him disqualifying as a serious
Well, not
candidate.
to voters.
I mean, Piers, not disqualified.
Well, I'll tell you what.
Not to Democratic voters in New York City.
I was in New York. Well, I was in New York last week. I was in New York last week when the mass shooting happened. And, you know, the NYPD reacted with incredible speed and incredible courage to stop that being a hell of a lot worse. And there you've got the guys who are going to be the mayor of the city, who's been saying terrible things about the NYPD, about defunding the police, about they're racist, they're homophobic, they're this, they're that, and the other. Imagine if you're in the NYPD right now and this guy's going to be your mayor.
Piers, he didn't say any of that last week. He's said things in the past, and let's hope, and I believe he's learned from them because he's going to represent the whole city, including the police officers. He's 33 years old. He struck a chord. I have confidence that he's going to learn on some of these issues as well.
Okay, well, we'll see. Kat Abughazaleh, is Sydney Sweeney a Nazi?
Sorry. My last name is Abughazaleh, by the way. I don't know. This has been a lot of discourse. Have
I been saying your surname wrong? I'm sorry.
Yeah, it's Abughazaleh.
I do apologize. I've got it written down wrong here. My apologies.
Yeah, I've seen a lot of discourse on this. I am really more focused on the campaign trail right now, but it seems like a lot of people.
Yeah, but do you think she's a Nazi
arms.
for doing an advert? For doing an advert for American Idol in which she says that they say she's got great genes?
I don't think it's a great look. I don't really know much about her political opinions, especially the statement that
apparently
American
she's
Eagle
a
put out
registered
later
Republican.
with, huh?
Apparently she's a registered Republican. It emerged this week. Yeah, she's a
I wasn't that
Republican,
surprised.
apparently.
I had heard things about that, but frankly, I just this is another one of those like culture war issues that I think that American Eagle, that statement that they put out was really weird, especially the 1488 coincidence. But I'm a lot more concerned with things that are affecting people right now, and that's housing, groceries, and healthcare being completely
Sorry, what was the coincidence you're talking about? Sorry.
There was one part of it that apparently had like 14 words and 88 characters, which may have been a coincidence, maybe not, but it's not a super great look for American Eagle.
Well, what are you getting at? What are you suggesting?
1488 is a notorious neo-Nazi dog whistle, but once again, could be a coincidence.
So they're all Nazis.
I literally did not say that. I am just, you asked me a question and I said I don't really care about this that much. I am more focused
But here's
on
my problem
actual
again,
things that are
Kat. Here's my problem
affecting
again.
people.
Until you stop calling absolutely everybody you don't agree with Nazis, there is no way you're going to win elections.
I literally did not do that. You were just putting words in my mouth.
You did. You literally did that. In fact, Joe Walsh was shaking his head because he knew what you were about to say. unless I'm mistaken,
I had pointed
Joe,
out
and
a
you could see
coincidence
she
that
was
other
gonna
people
go
were
along
talking about.
with
I am
promoting
literally
a
I have not
ridiculous
posted about
conspiracy
this.
theory that American Eagle and Sydney Sweeney are Nazis. It's ridiculous. It makes you sound completely ridiculous.
I didn't say that. I just said that like it's a weird coincidence and I think it's not a great look. But once again, I don't really care. We have petitioning starting tomorrow.
Well, you care enough to say it's not a great look, and they were.
Yeah, because you asked me if Sydney Sweeney
Nazis.
is a Nazi like 5 times in a row, and once again, I don't know.
Because I
don't really
imagined,
care.
like any sensible human being, your response would be, "Of course she's not." Harry Sisson, is Sydney Sweeney a Nazi?
No. No, she's not. She did it.
No, I'm not tapped into this topic.
Harry, do you have any problem about people talking about their great genes?
No, I don't care. Like if I just don't care. Like I don't think Sydney Sweeney's a Nazi. I respectfully disagree with Kat on the 1488 thing. You know, I'm not one for things like that. I just think this whole thing is stupid. I just don't care.
It's so stupid. And once again,
that's
this is
what
not
I
to say
What I
that,
love
like,
is I didn't.
It's on
What I love
purpose.
is I didn't know anything about the 1488 thing until she said that. And she said it because she wants people watching this to think maybe they're all a bunch of Nazis. And that's the problem for the Democrat Party, is you see everything through the prism of if you don't agree with somebody, they must be Nazis or white supremacists.
Piers, I don't think you're a white supremacist or a Nazi.
Thank you.
You and I disagree. Well, no, I mean, I'm just saying that as like, I don't think that anybody up here that's a Democrat thinks that everybody we disagree with is a Nazi. You and I disagree on plenty of issues, and we have respectful conversations, and they're always very insightful. And that's the case for many people I disagree with. I think you have to stop buying into these small, loud minority groups in the Democratic Party who happen to be the loudest. And they say, oh, this person's a Nazi, this person's a Nazi. Your average Democrat is not thinking that your average Republican's a Nazi. We can respectfully disagree.
Yeah,
Also,
you know,
most people
Piers,
don't
by
care
the
about
way,
this.
Piers, just to back up what Harry said, and I used to do some of this, the right is great at this. Here, Piers, you're right that Democrats often step in the culture war stuff and they don't defend it and they don't fight. But this Sydney Sweeney thing, really, there might have been a few folks on the left who got bent out of shape about it, but this was not a defund the police moment. This was the right jumped all over this, and they were actually the ones really kind of pushing that the left's making a big deal out of a gorgeous young woman in a pair of jeans.
To distract from the Epstein files,
I think she was just. Well, maybe, but if it did, it was successful. James Carville, how are Democrats actually going to win the next election? Give me a blueprint for success.
Well, of course we got. First of all, remember the Bud Light controversy? Boy, that cost everybody a lot of votes, didn't it? The Democrats are going to win the next election very simply. At this point, this is the most unpopular administration we've had in maybe American history since polling. We have not lost a special since the election. You're going to lose 1,000 pounds, and you're going to lose a 200-pound lunch at Scott's. That's almost guaranteed. And as opposed to force-feeding Democrats a political nominee, Democrats are going to actually pick their own, and we're going to have a really good 2028. We're going to win the House back in 2026. There is a reasonable chance, and when I say reasonable, I mean something over 35%, that we win the Senate. So I am not at all in any kind of a doom and gloom scenario, and I think that the party is healthy. I think there are a lot of different factions. I think they're all going to present a candidate. Maybe some will have multiple candidates, and I think Democratic voters are going to choose wisely in 2028. That's what I really believe.
Okay, Joe?
Look, I think, Piers, a lot of this is Trump. Look, in 2026, certainly the issues are going to be the cruelty of grabbing brown and black immigrants in Home Depot parking lots. That's not what America voted for. That cruelty is going to hurt Trump. And we haven't even touched upon the economy. I mean, Trump's wackadoodle tariff bullshit it's beginning to impact people's lives. So there's a great opening here, Piers, for Democrats. Piers, you're right. Democrats need to confidently jump into it and go after it.
Yeah, I think there are lots of ways the Democrats could be smart about the way they go after Trump. You know, for example, on immigration, if I was a Democrat running for office, I'd be saying, look, I think the president's done a great job on the southern border. Let's just give him credit. I actually think also that most Americans are very comfortable with deporting undocumented people in America who commit crimes. Okay, we can all agree on that. But what they're not comfortable about, and the polling supports this, is grabbing people in Home Depot who've lived here 10 years, who've got children here, who have jobs, who pay taxes, who contribute to the economy. So there are quite straightforward battle lines you can do here, right? But, I also think that I wouldn't underestimate Trump in terms of the next 3.5 years. The tariff war, it could work. I had a very smart economist in the Financial Times on saying, the jury's out. It could work. The stock market is higher now than it was before the so-called Liberation Day. So no one's quite sure how this all plays out. And on the foreign stage, I find it quite refreshing that we have an American president who is against war and wants to bring peace everywhere. I hope he's successful. It's refreshing to hear it. So again, if I was a Democrat, I'd say, I agree with President Trump. We want to bring an end to the war in Gaza, an end to the war in Ukraine, and an end to American troops fighting in foreign wars. I think that would be a very winning thing to do, whilst also picking your fights and criticizing him in all the different ways that are so easy to do. Kat, let me give you one last chance to not sound like a lunatic. How do you think the Democrats can win in 2028?
Action, not just words. I think we need to be meeting people's material needs. That's something I do with my campaign. We use our campaign resources to reach voters and help them right now. The amount of money that is going in to make a liberal Joe Rogan in a lab that could fund so many clinics, it could stock so many food banks. We need to be using our resources to fill the gaps that Trump is creating right now, not only because people need it, but to show that it's not. People have lost faith in politics, and understandably, it feels like there are so many promises, none of them are kept, and there is so much that we can do in this moment, currently, like right now. I can't overstate that enough, that we're just not. And paying for consultants that haven't won elections in decades, putting all of our money into ads that are not being used in the most effective way. We could be doing that to feed people and clothe people and make sure that they have homes.
The most effective political ad of modern times, according to the New York Times, in terms of the impact it had on voters, was the Kamala Harris is for they, them, Donald Trump is for you. So this issue that you don't think anybody cares about, the New York Times, the liberal Bible, determined it was unbelievably
The New York
effective.
Times, the liberal Bible.
And I would also say in relation to Joe Rogan, rather than trying to find a liberal Joe Rogan, why don't you just do a bit of history and realize he was a liberal? This guy was a Bernie Sanders fan. The party alienated Joe Rogan and pushed him towards Trump because the woke left was so insane. They did the same with Bill Maher, nearly. He didn't go as far as Joe Rogan, but he certainly became very critical of the Democrats. And the same with me, right? So you've got people who were naturally liberals who just have nothing in common with the woke left ideology because it's so insane. Yeah, that's why I keep saying, come back to the middle, sound normal again, play out common sense for the American people.
My middle, though, is that everyone has rights.
Well, hang on.
Everyone can afford housing, groceries, and healthcare with money left over.
I know it all sounds great. Give them all free housing, groceries, and so on. I know, you've got to pay for it. Unfortunately, that's called socialism, which never works. But you could get Joe Rogan back if you're smart. Harry, last word to you. How are the Democrats going to win in 2028?
I think it comes down to two things: authenticity and affordability. I really appreciate taking lessons from our enemies. Donald Trump in 2024, his campaign was affordability. He was talking about inflation. He was talking about grocery prices. He was talking about things like that. So we, in 2028, have to be laser focused on that. I don't think we should dive so much into Trump the man. I think we should talk about the repercussions of his policy. I think Joe and James were articulating the tariffs and how they're having an impact on people. Really dive into that stuff, hit him from that front. Don't just say Donald Trump sucks because, we as Democrats agree. And then authenticity, have someone who actually cares, actually believes in what they're saying, and has been fighting back against what they perceive to be Republican attacks in whatever office they happen to hold at that time.
Yeah, and actually maybe reserve calling people Nazis for when they're actual Nazis. That would be my little offering as well.
Yeah. I'll hold off on that one.
Thank you all to my panel. It's actually a really interesting debate for the life and soul and heart of the Democrats. I think America needs a good opposition, needs a strong Democratic Party. I don't like seeing the Democrats in such total disarray. But sometimes you've got to shake it all up, to shake it all out and find out who the next hero is going to be. It's going to be a fascinating thing to watch. I appreciate you all coming on. Thank you very much. Piers Morgan Uncensored is proudly independent. The only boss around here is me. If you enjoy our show, we ask for only one simple thing. Hit subscribe on YouTube and follow Piers Morgan Uncensored on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. And in return, we will continue our mission to inform, irritate and entertain. And we'll do it all for free. Independent, uncensored media has never been more critical, and we couldn't do it without you.